Good morning. It's been 8 days since since I've made a video about Roaring Spring campus of Frank's school, and specifically at least about the site of the former paper mill. But I had a thought. I'm going to go on talking about that site, even though I know that Jeff, the owner, has a very detailed plan for what he's going to do. I'm still going to talk about it because I think there are some things. I don't know if the plan is set in stone. I don't know how it really could be just yet. And I think there's some things that he might not have thought of that would be fine with him. And as I said, most of what I heard from him sounded good. I was wrong in my mind about some things, though. The paper mill site itself, where the building, where the paper was made, where the stream goes under the building, what they're cleaning up, the hard part, that's in the borough. It's not in Taylor Township. Now, Taylor Township, the way governments are organized here in Pennsylvania, townships are large areas, and boroughs, maybe I should say, are small, compact. Now, in New England, it was not like that. I mean, in New England, a town, New Hampshire at least, a town could be miles. You stayed in the town until you went to the next town. But here, you leave the borough, and then you go into a township, and then you go into another township. Eventually, you'll come to another borough. That's the way it is here in Pennsylvania. And the paper mill site itself is in the borough, which is what I had thought. I looked very carefully at the map to see how the zoning is. That's a new experience for me, really. But there's where I noticed that now most of his property is certainly in Taylor Township. That property is over 300 acres. It's huge because there was a pulp mill or processing area up above it, and storage for pulp, and a whole lot of the mountainside. And I think that's where his heart is, what he wants to do up there. And I don't know. And I told him, to me, it didn't really matter too much. What mattered to me was what was going to go right down there. And he had said it would be a cul-de-sac. I mentioned that I wish I could see a water wheel restored. Now, he does own the parking lot, I believe, where Mingle's department store was and is gone. I think, maybe the paper mill always owned that, because it was a company store before it was Mingle's department store. Some of this stuff I've learned from my looking at that scrapbook that Elsie has, the 90-year-old woman, and the water wheel. When I was looking at her site, or her scrapbook, I saw in a newspaper article that the original wheel, or at least the wheel that they then torqued down, that when it was built, it cost $53,000, which amazed me because I think that was back in 1950. Somewhere around 1950, maybe it was restored or there was a new wheel put there. Boy, that seemed like a lot of money. Anyway, why I'm doing this video right now is because in this talk, he recommended, Jeff recommended to me that I take a look at a place called Metamora, Indiana, because he thought it was a really, really special town. And I did, and it looks really nice, but nothing like Roaring Spring. I mean, Roaring Spring, I had told him, which I do still believe, that Roaring Spring could become a mecca for tourists, and I could do a lot to make that happen. Not just a tourist site to go visit, but bigger than that. And so I looked at that, and I saw that they had a water wheel. It was an undershot wheel, I believe, and it wasn't, it was maybe 10 feet, and it was active. It was cool. It was real nice. Metamora, Indiana. But then I got looking, while I was there, I got looking once again at water wheels. And I wanted to see, well, what's the biggest water wheel in the United States? I know there's one called Laxey or something like that, Laxey in Britain, that is the biggest in the world. I mean, it's huge. I think it's an undershot, but it's absolutely huge. I mean, the wheel itself must be 80 feet. I'm just guessing at that. But, and I found one, and it was 32 feet was the biggest. But that was the biggest continually operating water wheel in the United States. And then I looked again to just see, and I for some reason I was able to get around that, and so that was 32 feet. And then I saw another. I'm searching online, and then I saw another one that said 40 feet. I don't, in Kentucky, I think. It's the biggest, they thought it was the biggest overshot water wheel in the United States. I'm not going to say in the world, but in the United States, 40 feet, that was their claim. Well, that got me thinking, because from the Roaring Spring, the big spring, down to by the sewer plant, I had at first said it was like 120 feet. That was completely wrong. I think it's closer to 74 feet. And then from Water Street down to where the paper mill was is probably more like 50 feet. But another thing I had learned from him was that he owns or is responsible for the maintenance, I suppose, of a 14-inch, he knew how big it was, 14-inch pipe that brings water directly from the spring down to the mill site. And it's cast iron, it's strong. I referred to it as a penstock. And it could have been, I mean, they maybe were thinking possibly in those terms at that time, because it's, it's strong, bolted together cast iron. But what I realized was that penstock could be used as an inverted siphon. Now, I haven't mentioned that inverted siphon maybe ever in my course, but you know about siphoning gas, where you set up a suck on a hose and you get water going over a high spot, and it'll keep going over it once the siphon is established. I imagine you know about that. Well, an inverted siphon is shaped like this, and water coming in goes down through a dip, and then it comes back up to the level that it was over here. You don't really have to lose any level at all in an inverted siphon. Now, with an inverted siphon, the height could be gained or maintained all the way from where that pipe starts, which is at the source of the spring, probably underground in the spring. That same height could be maintained to deliver water to a sluice or a head race, basically to deliver water to the top of an overshot wheel. And that way, Roaring Spring could easily claim to have the highest or the biggest overshot water wheel in the United States, if not the world. That would be quite a claim. And it would also, I mean, give more head. You'd get a lot more power. And another thing he was saying, they've got an easement through there. They don't own that property to the spring, but an easement to get that water to that site. So anyway, a cul-de-sac is what he said is that's going to become. And a cul-de-sac could be built around a water wheel, and it would be spectacular, and it would not have to be costing tens of thousands of dollars to do and do very well. Not now, not knowing what I know now. So, and it could absolutely generate power all the time. I mean, lots of a regular powerhouse. I mean, to generate electricity, if that's what you want to be done with that power. I've discussed that before. So I'm passing this on. Maybe at some point Jeff will actually look at some of these videos to see, well, what's Frank talking about? Well, let me hear his ideas without, being in a meeting with him. I'm probably going to go back and talk to him a little bit more. So I'm doing this mostly because I've learned, because of a problem with an inverted siphon is if debris builds up at the bottom of the U, it's got to be cleaned out because that would block it. Whereas with a regular siphon, that would never happen. So you've got to have some kind of a way to like drain or vent or something the water at the bottom because of silt or whatever might build up. And then knowing that the borough actually, that site is part of the borough. It's not part of Taylor Township. So he's going to have two governments that are going to be looking, well, three, because of the state of Pennsylvania too, that are going to be looking at his plan and finding out if it's good. And I'm really glad to know that the borough is going to be one of them. Bye for now.